And I got some news for you. Now, I know you guys are looking and you're saying, well, that don't look like Aaron. Aaron's a little blacker than that.
Right.
No, but Aaron is running an errand, and he may be late and he may not make it. But in the event that he does, he knows how to chime in and break up the action. But in the meantime, I want to introduce to you, if you don't already know this cat, my friend, my brother, Dr. Jermaine Thomas. And this is listen. Me and this cat, we go back to grace preaching days.
Yep.
We had a difference of opinion, a parting of the ways, but through the magic of the universe,
Yep.
serendipity, synergism, that we've been reunited, and it feels so good. Oh, hey, you know what?
Reunited
Hey,
and it feels
say
so.
Aaron twice. Just say Aaron twice.
Aaron.
And
Hey,
Oh,
like Beetlejuice, there he is.
like magic.
Because I said Aaron one time, so I told Jermaine, I said, say Aaron twice.
that's dope.
That's dope.
So as usual, then I'm Derrick Day, and on the well, I don't know if it's right or left where you guys see it, but that guy is
Aaron Tomlinson.
that's right.
Little slow,
He had to
little-
think about it.
I did. I didn't realize we were live already. I don't know why I thought we were backstage still.
No, man,
I'm late.
no, man, you're right on time.
Right on time. Yes, sir.
Right on time.
Awesome.
So anyway, I'm gonna kick this over to my brother Jermaine because this is his subject. So Jermaine, go ahead and tell us what we're talking about. But before you do that, let's what's in the glass? Because that's an important segment.
Yes, sir. I got a cheap bourbon in my glass here. It's from the local Circle K.
Okay.
And I'm gonna tell you, it's pretty good. It's
Oh yeah, Bulleit, old fashioned.
old fashioned. And I smoke a Delicioso cigar, and the two really complements each other. Yeah, the cigar and the bourbon, man, it's phenomenal. It relaxes me after a long, stressful day of work, particularly on the weekend or Friday. So yeah, that's what's in my cup.
All right, Aaron, what you got there, man?
So I have a Portillo Malbec, just for something different.
Okay, a nice red. I like it. I'm doing what you're doing, Jermaine, but I actually made mine up. It's an old fashioned. But it's made with Bulleit bourbon.
Awesome.
Oh, okay.
So we were on the vibe.
And vibing, Joe.
I have one of these fancy hotel cups.
Oh, look at that, man. Hey, at least it ain't one of them ghetto red caps. I mean, you from the south side, you know what's up with those red cups.
Yeah, no doubt. That's how we party. It ain't no party without no red Solo cups.
That's right. Turn up. So, my brother, go ahead and take the floor. Tell us what we're talking about tonight.
Listen, man, you guys been on hitting on these subjects, and just really taking people, through just really thinking. And anatomy, I think, was the subject that came up in last week Friday, and that's been a hot button topic of mine, particularly in the deconstruction community, because there's a lot of people in that space that want to control how people deconstruct. And I was like, if the basis of it is not autonomy, then don't disregard them groups or whatever type of groups. There's people that's selling how to deconstruct. There's all kind of workshops and stuff like that. And I was just saying that if autonomy is not the premise and the foundation, don't do it. Take your autonomy back. And that's just the message, right? It's just, you see it in Iran. We talked about Iran last week. the women in Iran are leading the revolution there. They're taking their autonomy back. And that's what you're seeing, globally. This deconstruction phenomenon is something that's global. You have those that are Mormons that's deconstructing, and they're taking their autonomy back. You have people that's in Jehovah's Witnesses that's deconstructing, and so they're taking their autonomy back. And so there seems to be like this global phenomenon or movement, whatever you want to label it as, but people are, waking up and realizing that they have abdicated an aspects of their spirituality, to a book, to a denomination, or to a particular faith space or religion. And it's like people are saying, enough is enough. I want my autonomy back.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Jermaine, how would, just so we're all clear, words can be slippery sometimes.
Yeah.
We use words, and sometimes the way we're saying them is not the way people are hearing them. So can you just break down what you mean by autonomy a little bit more for us?
Yeah, what I mean by autonomy is, what resonates with you, what resonates with you, your heart, who you are, what you represent, your context, your lens, and how you see the world, that others don't get to dictate that for you, that you have every right to see the world as you want to see it, and how you show up in the world is your right to do that, as long as you're not, out here trying to harm or anything like that. So that's kind of how I define autonomy.
I love that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
If I could piggyback on that, I'll say that when I think of autonomy, I think of the intersection of freedom and control.
Mm.
In other words, where you ostensibly have freedom to do a thing, but autonomy, the lack of autonomy would say, okay, you have the freedom, but not the control. In other words, there's someone else that pulls the strings. And so it's not true freedom. It's more like a vestige of freedom. Right. Yeah. And so I was thinking about this, like when we talked about this last week, like I look at this like in terms of reproductive rights and abortion, right? Yeah. Because we're supposed to be in a country that ostensibly is free, that you have, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly and all of that. But now what they're saying is that you don't have autonomy over your own body, right? And this is a key thing. And this is where I think like a lot of Christians miss it, where a lot of men miss it, is that if you say, okay, you don't have control over your own body, woman, right? That we have the right to dictate whether or not you have to carry a child to term or not. Well, then it could be said that if you're a man, that you don't have the right to have a vasectomy.
Right.
Because, if we're going to put, laws that restrict or control reproductive rights, then that means that a man doesn't have the right to withhold his seed. And so then you get into, okay, if we lack autonomy, we're all enjoying adult beverages. Well, prohibition could come back. That you're free, but you're not free to drink alcohol. You're not free to smoke marijuana. You're not free to do anything, any of those things. And this is what I look at this as, is that if you're free to do what the fuck you want to the degree that you don't hurt anybody else.
Exactly.
That's where I'll stop.
Yeah, I'll jump in, and because I love thinking about this topic, because we're talking about groupthinks, and we all have a need for community. We all have a need for love and connection, and we tend to like people that like us, or that think like us, or that are like us, is what I meant to say. And so, but just thinking through the various different levels of groupthink, like just take the typical rat race scenario, right? Like where you check all the boxes, you get the job, you get the house, you get the wife and the 2 kids and the car, and now you got to get a better car because the neighbor down the street or your buddy, and we're killing
Lame
ourselves.
choices.
Like people are living to work rather than working to live, right? Because we have this mindset. One of the things I've been thinking about, and this is going to, start the show off with a bang, because it's going to be very unpopular opinion, maybe not with this audience, but in general. I've been thinking about the, obviously there's religion, there's groupthink there with religion, but there's American nationalism groupthink that's virtually a religion in and of itself. And so I had texted Derrick and said earlier in the week, I said, I'm just thinking, we've been through the Industrial Revolution since the agriculture era. We've been through the Industrial Revolution. We are in the information age, and we're still trying to run this country like it's 1776. And so think about that. I mean, think about the changes from when, guys were wearing white powdered wigs and challenging each other to duels with muskets, and you were still mostly on the East Coast, and that's the way our government structure is set up. Of course, it's not going to be functional in 2022. It's just not. I mean, you're using something from a time period that's an archaeological dig at this point in terms of how much change has happened. So there's no way this system. So here's another form of groupthink, right? Where we every election cycle, it's the same damn thing. You got 2 parties, you got choices on both sides that you think suck, and you try to pick the one that sucks the least. And I think that was some of the appeal of Donald Trump in 2016, was because he was an outsider. He was coming from the outside, fresh ideas, successful businessman, alpha in the room, all of those dynamics. It gave us the illusion, I think, that, we're breaking out of this thing. But if you were to suggest, or someone was to suggest, let's tear up the Constitution and let's just start over because it's antiquated, it's not working. Now all of a sudden look out, especially on social media. I mean, get out of this country if you don't like it. Go somewhere else. Like, I'd love to, but I can't make enough money in this country to actually move. So,
well, see, I can work anywhere, but the VA doesn't guarantee loans overseas.
Right.
So that's why I'm still here.
Yeah. But I'm just, you see what I'm saying? Like, sometimes to rescue your own autonomy, you have to, at the same time, understand the layers of groupthink that are controlling your life, controlling the way you think, controlling your speech, controlling your actions. And sometimes what we consider to be immoral or taboo, like for an American to suggest, let's tear up the Constitution and start over, that's a sin in the religion of American patriotism. And so now you're not a patriot, now you hate our country, now you hate our veterans. No, I'm just saying we're operating on an antiquated system. But you can't even say that. So you've got, I haven't sinned. I haven't hurt anybody by what I said. I haven't brought harm to anyone, disrespect to anybody, just trying to, contribute to the conversation. But people can label that as you entered into a taboo that we don't do. And now you got the mob coming after you. And so the navigating that tension between, am I a free thinker? Do I have autonomy? And how do I deal with the mob mentality when I step outside the lines, even if I'm not bringing harm?
Yeah, and it is when you were talking, what I was thinking was, this is where, like, and I think you guys talked about it too, like anarchists, right? It's almost as if you have to be anarchist, right? To a degree, with whether it's the social condition. Like for me, I start with me. A friend of mine said that my deconstruction was like on steroids, and it was. So to me, it was like, it was not just deconstructing, right, religion, right? It was also the social constructs, the social conditioning that I was born into, the context of seeing the world, through a certain set of lens.
Right.
And it was like I had to become anarchist, right? And recognize these various schools of thought. I recognize my schools of thought with respect to religion, but I never really dived or dove into recognizing my thinking when it came to my social conditioning. You alluded to it earlier, Derrick, when you talked about male privilege, right? I'm recognizing the reality of my male privilege and how I benefit from a patriarchy driven society. I also recognize my privilege as a cisgender man, right? In a heteronormative society. And so these constructs that you're talking about, or these things, is almost you have to recognize your systems that's been your puppeteer, for so many years. And so that's what I've been recognizing, is that I haven't had an original thought, right? My thought, or my essence of thinking, has come, or birthed out of my conditioning. And so it's when my deconstruction happened, it was like, man, I had to like lose my mind in a sense, right? To gain a different sense of mindset and recognize where I was in my school of thought and saying, this is where I am. And I recognize where I am, but at the same time, I'm open, right? No longer giving my life to certainty, no longer giving my rational thought and thinking to just one aspect of thought, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. Yeah, I'll come at that. God, I'm just taking all kinds of risks tonight. I'll come at that social conditioning thing from a cis male heterosexual white dude. Like, and I tell people I'm the whitest dude.
Wait a minute. You're white?
Well, I try to hide it, but
God damn it.
I try to do the best I can. Maybe in a past life, But I tell people, I mean, man, this is a real thing for me. Like when I haven't had my DNA done, but enough siblings and mom and dad and whatever have had their DNA done, right? That like our gene pool is that guy we don't mention's wet dream in terms of Aryan supremacy or whatever. And I have to look at that and think, damn, my ancestors were committed to staying. I mean, they're dude, 100% European, 100% white European. And I was born into a, well-to-do family comparatively to our community. And so there's a lot of conditioning. You're talking about male privilege. Obviously, there was a lot of conditioning that went with white privilege and the benefit, how I was benefiting from the system. And so I've been thinking about that too. I've been thinking about how do we, here's what I wish. I wish that more white people would come clean about their own process. Hey, look, it's not my fault that I was born into this system of thinking that benefited my ancestors, that benefits me personally. And then obviously what comes with that is some racist thinking. It just does. That's just part of, you can't not have it. You know what I'm saying? And so I wish more people would come out and say, yeah, I was raised in this culture and this is what I had to think through. And here's some of the things that I did that I regretted. And this is what I've learned from, and this is how I've learned, and this is how I'd like to go forward, instead of taking this super defensive posture. And again, I guess I'm kind of, and I don't want to get into this can of worms, but I'm thinking about someone like Jerry Jones, gets that picture of himself in Arkansas when he's 14, 15 years old. Mm-hmm. Well, damn well, he thought like, his grandpa was a member of certain white supremacist communities. So, damn well that he thought,
he was in there.
Yeah, I mean, you're not hiding it. So
yeah,
why do we come out defensive about it? And I was just curious, or whatever the case may be. And why not just come out and say I was a product of a culture and a time, and I've had to learn and grow, and maybe he hasn't. Yeah. I have that book, by the way, Jermaine. But it bothers me as a white person to see that happening. Like, why can't we just be honest and say,
I want to throw out something a little existential here, right? That Jermaine, you talked about the conditioning, right? The conditioning that informs, that influences, that impacts your thinking. And then you also mentioned the lens And so I want to bifurcate that a little bit, right? Because I really think that conditioning is something you really don't have a choice in.
Yep.
You know, in other words,
True.
these are things that are passed on generationally, that they're part of your community, that they're part of your culture, they're part of your family dynamic, right? But the lens is a choice.
It's a choice. That's good.
You know, that because there are some people that, you know, okay, and I've dealt with people, and they'll tell me very candidly, you know, hey Derrick, you know, this is the way I was conditioned to think, right? But at some point, if you have any conscious awakening, any conscious thinking, that you realize that, okay, conditioning is one thing, but I do have a choice. I have a choice as to how I'm going to interpret this information that I'm being presented with, right? So now that's where the lens comes in, because now you can say, okay, I know what my conditioning is. And see, I'm going to give Aaron a shout out, because, you know, we talk a lot, and his conditioning was very pervasive.
Yeah.
Right. But somewhere along the line, he woke up and he said, okay, I know what I've been conditioned to think. I know what I've been told I should think. I know what I'm told how I should behave, but I've chosen this lens instead of the other. And so Jermaine, I want to kick that back to you. Like, you know, I want to unpack that a little bit, you know, the difference between conditioning, because we all have our conditioning.
Yep.
You're from the south side of Chicago. I'm from the west side of Detroit. Aaron's from Colorado. It's like we all have a different cultural, you know, sway to our lives. But I want you to unpack that, because I think this is going to be good.
Yeah, I think this is really good conversation, because when you talk about the anatomy of autonomy, right? And I think we're digging into that. Is the aspect of that is self-awareness, right? Is that you become more self-aware to the reality of your conditioning. So for me, I'm becoming more aware to my conditioning, right? Within the context, let's say, for in a heteronormative society. You know, I have a son. I'm a proud father of a queer son. And so I had to deal with my religious conditioning and also my social conditioning as far as the heteronormative stuff that came with that. Yeah. You know, the old dad thing of, man, you know, go knock him out, son, you know, this whole contact, right? You know, so you want to perpetuate that type of stuff, you know, and have a switch. Now, I told my son, though, today is different, though, you know, like you said about lens change. So today is different for me. I told my son, you know, it's no different than if I was talking to my daughter, right? You know, we don't bring anybody ugly home.
Right.
That's my only prejudice. We don't do ugly.
Know, my
Beauty's
dad
in the eye of the beholder.
He said, I don't care what. He said, I don't care what color she is, but don't bring no ugly broad home.
Yeah, I don't care what color.
That's not my thing, and that's the way my dad said it. I'm just repeating him.
Right. So, you know, all of these factors, you know, goes into that. And for me, I often say that social services and social work was my salvation, right? Or my saving grace, because it exposed, you know, those binary thinking that the conditioning does bring to you. And so our programming was the first program to pilot bringing in LGBTQ children within the context of a group home setting. That had never happened before, because the child welfare system was getting an influx of queer children into the system. And so we had to, a lot of this different staff had stronghold religious ideas and ideology, right? And a lot of us were resistant to this change. But one of the youth was a trans youth who took a liking to me. So I would be outside and I would be with this trans youth, and I'm like, these people looking at us, it was like socially awkward, right? That beautiful girl, beautiful, beautiful. But she looked to me as a protector too. But I also heard her story. And so that stuff like that began to soften this hardness, right? This phobia that I had, which was not rooted in anything other than the conditioning. So this is where that your biases come into that, your cognitive dissonances come in at, and you begin to challenge, you begin to face yourself, you begin to face your BS, your belief system, and so it was like these moments I had in life where where I had to challenge my BS.
Yeah. Let me, so that reminds me of a conversation I had this week with a Christian who's wrestling with this whole LGBTQ issue. And everybody's at different levels. I look at that now and I just think, come on, man, like get over it. But everybody's, at different places. And so this person reached out to me to get my thoughts on the word homosexual in the Bible and whatever. And and I told him, I said, look, I said, if you take the Jesus story, now again, I'm talking to a Christian, so I realize I'm talking to a lot of atheists right now. So give me some grace, you guys out there. I said, Jesus, if anything in the scriptures was breaking down barriers to what were marginalized people in that time period. You think about the woman at the well, who was the Samaritan woman, the Jews didn't have any dealings with her, the woman with the issue of blood that was considered unclean, or the woman that was bound by a spirit of infirmity. The whole fact of the gospel going to the Gentiles. This was breaking down social barriers. So there's this real social component to the gospel. And I said, you guys want to sit there and argue about a fucking word? And that's what I said. You want to argue about what does this Greek fucking word mean? And you're missing the whole spirit of what Jesus did. So talk about the epitome of straining a gnat and swallowing a camel, right? But I want to run something past you with this idea of groupthink and autonomy. So one of the things I said was, I think if Jesus were alive today, he'd be hanging out with the drag queens and at the gay clubs and stuff like that. And I'm very serious about that. But I just listening to you talk right now, Jermaine, our brains generally like simple. We like simple, we like safe, we like predictability, and we like security. And the easiest level, the lowest level of thinking, I'm sure, like Bloom's taxonomy or whatever, it's like binary thinking, right? Is really easy. And this is where conservatives get sucked in, because the conservatives have done a really good job of messaging simple, either or, black and white issues. Abortion. There's no nuance to it. It's just, we're pro-life, boom, that's it. LGBTQ community, you're either hetero, straight, or you're wrong. And so for me, the transgender, if anything, speaking prophetically, and for those who can't see, I'm putting it in air quotes, if anything speaking prophetically, and by that I mean outside of the paradigm to change, it's that, because it's right in your face. Not everything is binary. And I think one of the reasons they get so much hatred is because it challenges that fundamental need of our social constructs to be able to organize around very simplistic thinking and not have to do any higher level thinking that includes nuance and difference.
That's so good.
I want to jump in on that, because here's the funny thing about that, is that we all have this sliding scale of thought, right? Where on certain things, we're binary. It's either black or white, yes or no, up or down, east or west, north or south. It's either or, right? Boolean thinking. But then we slide down the scale and we pick where we want to nuance.
So true. So true, Derrick.
And this is, and here's the thing. Everybody, I have not met a person yet that doesn't suffer from that to some degree. I believe that's part of the human condition.
Yep.
But when you're steeped in religion, the distance in that sliding scale, it looks less like a rheostat than it does like a switch because that distance is real short. Because it's like, here I'm, well, God said, God said. Oh, but wait, Jesus didn't say that. Well, but that's not what you have to look at the context then, and you start nuancing things, and the distance between what is binary. See, for most people, the distance between what is binary and what is nuanced is pretty broad. Yeah. There's a lot of space in between there. But when you get to religion and religious people, that distance is very short. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how you talk about being able to change gears quickly. That's, I think that religious people have the ability to change gears faster than anyone else because that distance is short. You're not traversing a lot of, you're not traversing a lot of granularity, right? Here it's very solid, but just two steps over, it's very nuanced. Anyway,
yeah. Just to piggyback to that, and you talked about neuroplasticity last week as well. There's research that talks about fundamentalism and how it changes the brain. It sets the brain up into aspects of it builds a complex. Mm-hmm. Fundamentalism is a psychiatric complex. It is. It's just it rewires the brain, just like trauma rewires the brain.
Yep. Yeah.
And so it's these mechanisms of control that comes through these filters of conditioning, religious conditioning, social conditioning. It impacts the brain. Yep. And so the other aspect of the anatomy or the anatomy of autonomy is the capacity to appeal to objectivity and intellectual honesty. Mm-hmm. And that's a skill set. That's something you have to engage in intentionally. That's in the average pew person, church person, or whatever, is not going to gain that. Again, social services and the ongoing trainings, mm-hmm. Cultural competency, social competency, right? All of those things, those were the things that fostered and nurtured within me to give my getaway in some respect or another, and as well as life and life experiences. So, for example, and how my mind works, I'm divergent, right? I'm a very divergent thinker. I think differently. And I've always I got teased as a kid for thinking divergently. I'm just wired that way. But one of the things for me was this recognizing how objectivity and being objective, reasoning, right? To ask questions, to ask the questions. So, for example, when it came to like salvation, right? This whole thing about salvation or whatever. So the question came to me was, well, what do you do with people who, because I work with persons who have severe intellectual disabilities, mm-hmm. For some of them, they can't even recognize their own existence, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're considered what you call total care. And so their total care is dependent upon another hopefully caring, loving human being, right? Mm-hmm. And so if this thing about salvation or the Christian narrative that goes with that about reasoning, right? You have to recognize your sin. And so, well, what about them? What about them recognizing their sin? They don't have the capacity to recognize if they're a sinner, their nature, their sin nature and things like that. So it was that type of thinking, right, that was going on behind the scenes in the back of my brain. I was like, rebuke you, Satan, but I realized, that wasn't Satan, that was you. That was me. Saying, listen, motherfucker, think. You know what I mean? This shit don't make no sense. So I started to pay attention to that. And so it was those real life scenarios and situations, that helped me get my getaway out of the hive mind or groupthink, that comes with that.
Yeah.
So
I think, go ahead, Jermaine. No, I want you to finish your thought.
No. I just think that self-awareness is a critical piece to the whole autonomy thing.
Yeah. I love what you said about the what religion does to the brain. You remember those commercials back in the 80s when they were doing the whole war on drugs?
This is your brain.
Yeah, you know exactly where I'm going, where they're frying an egg and saying this is your brain on drugs. And so some of the research, because I've looked at it, it was interesting. Fundamentalism, like you're talking about, or what people would call evangelical Christianity in America, or any hardcore religious institution, I suppose fundamentalist Judaism would show the same results. So it literally causes the limbic system to swell.
Mm.
And the limbic system is responsible for, kind of our behavioral and emotional responses, particularly in regards to survival mechanisms. And so what we need to understand is that the brain wires, and if you grew up in church or in a Christian environment, it wires really, really young. So I remember my Methodist preacher, preaching hellfire and brimstone in our little church that I grew up in, and being scared shitless as a kid, So that's activating that limbic system, causing the limbic system to swell and causing neurons to fire together. And what fires together wires together. And so literally your hardware then becomes conditioned to this traumatic response. Your brain is swelling every time you go to church, or every time I went to church after that. Yeah. And I heard a hellfire and brimstone, or a salvation message, or an evangelical message, or a your flesh is wrong message, or your heart is wrong, or you need to change. I mean, let's be honest. Those of us that sat in church, we received a you're not okay the way you are and you need to change message every single that was our diet, and some of us couldn't get enough. Oh, give me more, Sunday morning's not enough for me. Give me Sunday night, give me Wednesday night Bible study. Oh, I'm gonna watch TBN, so you get this constant bombardment. Yeah, and that's why it's hard for people to change, because their brain is hardwired for that message, and there's so much existential fear. If I let go of Jesus, if I reject this message, if I become an atheist, if I don't get it all, like there is deep existential fear tied to that. And so of course you're going to get a lot of pushback and resistance. But what's sad is that people are giving up their autonomy in the process and not realizing that they're operating, and this isn't my words, as you can look at the research of Dr. Andrew Newberg, for example, MD, they're making a brain damage decision. Like religion literally causes brain damage.
It's a funny thing too, that Aaron, you were talking about this, that, the fear factor, and Ben Urban had said something here. He said fundamentalism manifests as inflammation. He said that right before you said what you said. Right.
Wow, that's cool.
So Ben's a prophet anyway, but
he is.
But I digress. One of the things is that, like, people, we're all over 40. I think we're probably all over 50.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is, like, I look at my life, like when I was younger, I raised my share of hell. I drank all I could, I smoked all I could, I fucked all I could.
Young bull.
Listen, I did it, right? And I know, like, when you reach a certain point in your life, you become aware of your own mortality, right? So I think about this, and I got to share with you guys a story, and I have to give a shout out, because I just found out yesterday that one of my best friends died.
Oh my goodness, Derrick.
We have been friends for almost 50 years. And just 3 years ago, before the pandemic, he was in Phoenix, he and his wife, and he and his wife, me and my wife, my friend Marshall and his kids, we all had dinner. This was just 3 years ago,
Mhm.
And anyway, what I want to say about this is that Mike was a retired Detroit police officer.
Mhm.
He had seen some of the worst things because he was part of a drug interdiction team, and he decided to retire when he got shot, and the bullet went through his hand and through his shoulder, and he said, "Okay, I've had enough." And the funny thing about Mike is that Mike never hedged his bets. And that's what I'm getting at, is that you get to be like 40 years old and all of a sudden you think, gee whiz, I need Jesus.
Yeah.
Because I see that the runway ahead of me is shorter than the runway behind me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I need to get my shit together so that my afterlife, my permanent vacation, my permanent retirement looks good. Right.
Yeah.
But I want to say this about Mike, is that Mike was not a cat who hedged his bets. It was like, Mike said that he believed in the power of love.
Mm.
And that was it. He said, Derrick, he said, I really don't care where that power emanates from. I just care that it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I say that to say is that, like, something that both of you had touched on is that, you have this urge to try to connect to something that's steady, that's predictable, that, I can say, I know this, and it makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that appeals to, Aaron, you mentioned the limbic system, the lizard brain. I think that it appeals to that, because it's simple. It's like, I don't have to think about it. I can just cast all my care, right? And everything is going to be okay. But I want to say something and change gears just a little bit, because we're talking about anatomy, right? And I believe that autonomy, like any good body, has components.
Yep.
That it has a head, that it has a heart,
Mm-hmm.
and that it has limbs.
Yeah.
Right. So let's break that down. Let's break down autonomy into anatomical terms and say, okay, what does the thought of autonomy look like? What does the feeling of autonomy look like? And what does the action of autonomy look like?
That's good. That's a good ass question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
That's a good question. I want to start with maybe the heart, right? The heart, speaking to about the self-awareness, right? The self-awareness piece, the exposure to various different cultures, that the human connection, I think, is the heart piece, right? We're hardwired for community.
Yeah.
And duality is an impediment to that, right?
Ooh, yes.
In leaning into, how connected we really are, uplifting the heart of, this is why I ascribe a lot to omninism, right? Because looking for that connection, right? Looking for, not that there's truth here, but the subjective truth that people experience from their particular context is what connects us, right? This desire to want to know my sense of the world. What is my sense of self? Who am I? This is why ancestry.com is so popular, right? Because people want to know, who they are. The generations before us are no different, right? This is what bred Abrahamism, is a society that wanted to make a sense of their identity in the world and who they were and who they are.
Mhm.
You know, they share stories. You know, they didn't have a school setting like we did, and so the human connection, they told stories to make those connections, to give those life lessons, right? You know,
Yeah.
until we institutionalized that shit and made it into a religion. You know, and then set the priests before us in this sense of what we call
Yep.
the divine. You know, but the heart of it was community in the heart to heart connection that we were to have. And I think that if human connection becomes the focal point, right? I think that that elevates the heart to speaks to autonomy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. My line of thinking was very similar to that, in the sense that I think autonomy has to begin with equality for all. And there's two, for me, there's two components to that binary. Sorry, just had to throw that in there. I almost felt like a hip hop song or something. No, I'm just kidding. And here's what I mean by that. Equality means that I don't have to exalt anyone above myself. So just like you were saying, Jermaine, I don't have to find a priest. I don't have to. I mean, and this is a real big deal for people because a lot of people other reference when it comes to how they're going to be in the world. And so what I mean is that they're looking at what's this person's opinion of me going to be. So I'm going to morph into something that is going to cause this person to have a positive opinion of me, or I'm not smart enough. I don't know enough. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why we can exalt other people above ourselves. Now, granted, to nuance this, I believe in expertise, and I think one of the dangers of this type of thinking with autonomy is that we alienate experts from our lives.
Yeah.
That can give us important information, right? So
Wow.
I want to respect someone's expertise, but that does not make them better than me. That does not make them superior to me. That does not mean I have to follow their advice. It just means I want to consider their advice, right? So there's that component to equality, and I think this speaks to the heart of the anatomy of autonomy. But then the flip side of that is the need for superiority. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
That's a tempting drug.
It is.
And the idea that, so you mentioned omniism, the idea that my religion is right and all y'all just haven't figured it out yet. Like, that feels good, right?
Yeah.
It does.
But
That,
now,
that air of superiority makes you feel better about yourself.
yeah, and so now I'm taking away other people's autonomy. And so as I was listening to both of you talk, I had this question come up, and I think this speaks to the heart of autonomy. If I don't allow you or the person in my life to express their autonomy, then am I really loving you? And then what if your autonomy offends me? So you mentioned, Jermaine, having a queer son and being, programmed with that sort of religious programming. Now all of a sudden you got a conflict. This isn't just a philosophical argument anymore. This is somebody you would lay your life down for. And so you could go one of two ways. You could, no, I know what's best. I love you. I know what's best for you, and you need to conform. Or I love you enough that I honor your autonomy, and then we're back to equality. So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on some of that.
Well, Jermaine touched on the heart. I want to touch on the hands. I want to talk about the limbs. I want to talk about walking this thing out. I want to talk about how we affect it, because this is the thing that I've taken the stance that silence equals complicity.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That if you're willing to be silent about a thing, you're essentially saying that thing is okay. And this was part of my departure from all things religious or spiritual, because I was of the mindset that when I see discrimination, when I see disenfranchisement, when I see oppression,
Mhm.
while I realize I don't have full autonomy as a black man in America, but it's incumbent upon me to speak out when I see these things. And it's incumbent upon me to support those who are being otherwise maligned, right? And I've given these examples before. Like I've had gay friends that were in ministry. You know, I think of P.K. Langley and Will Rucker and Ramel Parks Weekly, and how these people have all influenced. Because I was one of those. It's not Adam and Steve; it's Adam and Eve preachers. I
Yep.
was one of those guys. But what I realized is that oppression anywhere is oppression everywhere.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
And so if I'm willing to turn a blind eye, turn a deaf ear to their plight, to the plight of the gay person, the trans person, I'm basically inviting the rest of humanity to turn a blind eye or a deaf ear to the plight of me.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so it became incumbent upon me to speak out whenever I saw injustice, and not just to speak out, but to actually do something. I began to put my money where my mouth is, you know, literally, to be willing to march with, or lock arms with, or to lend a listening ear to, or whatever it took, to make sure that the people who were in these marginalized categories, that they felt validated,
Yeah.
and not just validated, but tolerated, and not just tolerated, but celebrated. And Aaron, you and I, we've talked about this a lot, because it's not enough to just say, you know, okay, I acknowledge that you exist, and it's okay. But the thing is that, you know, we want to celebrate who we want to celebrate, and I think that the difficulty in this comes in when we say, okay, I'm going to celebrate beyond what I think is celebratory, and
Dude.
so it's like this is walking it out. This isn't just thinking about it. This isn't just feeling about it, but this is acting on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Jermaine, I want to get your thoughts on it, but I want to give Derrick a shout out real quick, because one of the things I really respect and appreciate about Derrick is that mindset. So, you know, we've all had groups of people who have had trauma. You as a social worker, I'm sure you've seen this. You watch this in group conversations where we try to one up each other with our victimhood. Well, you think you had it bad as a child. Hear my trauma story. You know, we're all kind of trauma dumping on each other and trying to one up each other.
big dick trauma contests.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Or you could have this mentality that I got enough shit on my plate. I can't worry about your shit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. I get you're oppressed. I get you're struggling, but I'm barely surviving. So I don't give a shit about that. And so I love, Derrick, what you said about, I don't know how you said it. I can't remember. It was so good though. But you know, oppression against one is oppression against all. Or if we tolerate oppression against one, we tolerate oppression against all. But anyway, Jermaine, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, just to echo that, and I say that a lot now as well. You know, an injustice here is an injustice everywhere. And so for me, what that looks like in actuality, right, is that I value my autonomy today. I value my autonomy today to put boundaries around that, right? but I also I realized how much I abdicated, my spirituality. In advocating your spirituality is giving up your voice too.
Ooh,
Wow.
And I gave up my voice,
dude,
and I'm getting my voice
dude,
back.
that's a whole other
And
episode.
so in
That's
me
a whole
getting my
nother episode.
I'm realizing that I can now, with my voice in that power, right, to leverage that. So I leverage my space as a heteronormative, in a heteronormative society as a cisgender man to bring conversation about the plight of those in the LGBTQ community and those in the trans community. And so even on my page today, I talked about there is a trans woman who had a trans man and trans woman. They had a baby, and I talked about how the status quo thinking, like that. I use Jim Crow as an example, right? Because in Jim Crow there were those that benefited from white power and white privilege, right? They benefited from the system.
Right.
Some of them may have said, hey, this is not right, but they never vocalized it to the degree that they needed to, right?
Right.
And so there are some people that held on to that to the point where they died believing that I or my people would never have the opportunity to have a voice and have access. They wanted a world of whiteness, okay? And they died in that reality.
Thus, let's burn the Constitution and start over, right? Because that was anyway. Sorry, had to throw that.
I got to chime in on that because Aaron, we were texting earlier this week, and I said to you, when he said that, I'm like, God damn it. I kind of agree with him, that okay, but this is something you and I have been talking about for years, is that that maybe we need to convene a constitutional convention and say, okay, now let's go back and rewrite this document that codifies what our rights are, what our responsibilities are as citizens. How do we exercise our franchise of citizenship? But we do this in the context of, okay, Blacks weren't involved in the original discussion. Native Americans weren't. Women weren't. LGBTQ plus people were not included. Indian, Southeast Asian. None of these people that make up the fabric. And this is, God, this is the important thing, because we talk about the melting pot, right? And this is not the melting pot.
Right.
I want to make that clear. What this is a tapestry.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about a tapestry is that if you examine it in detail, you see every thread that's involved in it. See, when you get the melting pot, when you make a soup, you may taste the essence of paprika. You may taste the essence of garlic, but it's melded in, and you really can't distinguish what comprises it because everything becomes one. And here's the thing, that when you talk about e pluribus unum, out of many one, it's not saying that we all sacrifice our own identity. It's not that we sacrifice our own way of thinking or our own way of being. It's saying that we're committing to being a thread in this greater tapestry, that when you examine it, you will see each individual thread in the tapestry if you're willing to look.
And I think you're right. That's, again, the anarchy aspect of it, right? Is to upset the social order or the status quo within the context of the social order. I said that even when it comes to, this context of religion, right? If you really want change, right? let's reconvene in this idea about the Bible and expanding it, because women wasn't included in that conversation. you know, if you as a Christian person, right, really want to talk about change, then we need to expand this conversation, about, the what was the Nicene Creed and all of that stuff, that we need a new one.
Yeah.
We need a new one. We need a new one. And so I think that, as we progress and as we evolve, I think these type of conversations, although they may be viewed on the fringes, right?
Yeah.
But this is the nexus of conversation that need to be had when we talk about change. There is no gatekeepers of the social order. And to leverage our positions of privilege to have these types of conversations, whatever space of privilege that you have, to say that it is time to upset the old order of things and to flip that shit on its head, and to start over again. And that's a necessary to where, if we're truly to evolve as humanity with respect to value autonomy, right? Holistically and across the board and systematically, it does require that type of change.
Yeah. When I think about this, the level I'm thinking about it on is, like, I do believe we're in a different age. I do believe there's something to the precession of the equinox and the way the energy impacts consciousness and whatever. Don't have any science for that, but I still believe it's true. But I think we're seeing, like, these systems are going to completely break down. And I think that's what we're seeing. And so here's my point. I said this kind of towards the beginning. We've been through the industrial age, and now we're in the information age, and we're still governing like it's 1776. Because 1776 was the agricultural age, right? Which is why the land was so important. You got to understand that land was everything, which is why we did to the Native Americans what we did to the Native Americans, stole their land. And so that's why you have states. I mean, I'm in the state of Colorado. That is a landmark, right? That's a geographical thing. And if I cross over, like, I can smoke weed, let's say, in Colorado. If I cross over to, I don't even know if it's legal in Kansas, but forgive me if you're in Kansas. I don't follow Kansas laws, but let's say it's not. I can't transport my weed, or I can't even take it on an airplane flight to Las Vegas where it is legal, right? Because all the governing statutes, it's the states' rights. We need to think about states' rights. Think about how that's set up. That's set up around land, which is set up around an economic system of agriculture. Slavery was about an economic system of agriculture and free labor, right? We're not there anymore.
Right.
Not there anymore. Now people buy up land to build housing units to jack up the price of real estate and the rent and gain economic advantage that way. But in the information age now, like, I've never met either one of you guys, and yet I like you more than my neighbors.
I can dig it.
What I'm saying is we're not geographically locked anymore. And so, people talk about civil war coming in America. You can't compare anything that might be coming in terms of conflict to civil war, because civil war was an agricultural war, and we're not experiencing an agricultural war. And the boundaries are not agricultural anymore. The boundaries are ideas. The boundaries are opinions and beliefs and information. And so I can connect with you guys on the level of deconstruction and being progressive and all this stuff. And I can't connect with my neighbor that's flying the, Blue Lives Matter flag and the Don't Tread on Me flag, and has 5 of them sticking out of his pickup truck, his F-150, while he goes and wears his Oakleys and has his, facial hair and white shirt and his jeans, and then shows up at the local restaurant where every other guy, without exception, except for me, well, I have facial hair right now, but has, the same. I'm like, God, doesn't somebody want to stand out? Like, what happened to men's fashion? like, what the fuck? But you see what I'm saying? So how do you have a civil war when the boundaries are ideas, not territories?
That's good.
And so we have to adapt to that. So we're still governing. Oh, we believe in states' rights. I think Roe v. Wade should have been overturned because it should be returned to states' rights. You're talking like a fucking dinosaur because you are using a construct of reality that is based on an economic system that is rooted in agriculture and the possession of land, whereas now we are in the information age. We're in the age of artificial intelligence. I mean, what the hell are my kids going to do?
Well, no, you talk about this about based on land, right? And that every state has 2 senators, which means that Wyoming has the same representation as, say, California. Now, back in the day when it was basically you wanted to have equal representation, that made sense because but the thing is based on land.
Yep.
And not on, the people. And I think that that one of the things that we need to do, and again, Aaron, you talk about unpopular thoughts, unpopular opinions. I really believe that we should go to a parliamentary style government.
Yeah.
That a government is based on a coalition of factions instead of one party just simply rum rolling the other.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I looked something up because I have to introduce this into my mantra, right? I had to get this right, but Missy Elliott was a fucking prophet. And she said in this song, she said in her work it lyrics, she says, "Is it worth it? Let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it and reverse it." Listen, if we're not willing to put our thing down, flip it and reverse it. What she's saying is that you have to be able to take everything that you know and be prepared to reconsider it.
Yep.
That's good. And one of the things that I think that we have a problem with in this country is that we think that certain things are sacrosanct and that they're untouchable. Well, the reality is that as society changes,
yep,
as the demographic changes, as people go from being rural to being urban, as people go from a land-based society to an information-based society, as people go from a commodities base to a knowledge based society, that we have to put our thing down, flip it and reverse it. We have to be prepared to change this shit.
Derrick, what happens when we go from an information based society to an AI based society, to a VR based society?
And do that, something, I'm going to tell you something. This is what I deal with on a day-to-day basis, because what I'm telling customers in my profession, because what we do is we take customer data center workloads of their enterprise architecture and move it to the cloud. Okay, so the cloud essentially becomes the next data center, but it's not just another data center, because the cloud has all of these different things that allow you to leverage and unlock the value of your data and make your data work for you. So now it's like we're talking about using AI to make critical business decisions, to make these decisions faster than an executive board could, to make decisions, I mean, basically to track decision making in real time to customer preferences.
Come on, man.
So what Aaron is saying is really good. What happens when we go from an merely information based to AI? So now we're taking data and we're applying machine learning to it. We're creating models to learn what's actually happening in our various marketplaces, in our various industry verticals. And now we're saying, okay, AI, I need you to look across these silos and make a decision for me.
Dude,
What happens then?
What happens to the economic system? Because I don't want to leave the economics out of this. Like, the agricultural age was called that because that was the main thrust of economics. Industrial age, you know, Detroit, car manufacturing, assembly line.
Manufacturing age,
Maybe it's already happened, but what happens when AI takes over all the manufacturing plants?
Yep.
Okay, so let me give you an example, right? I'm going to give you a real world example, right? Social media. People are going out and they're doing things that influence people's decisions. They say, okay, these shoes are the hot shoes. This backpack is the hot backpack. This car is the hot car, right? And everybody's, this is what's out there. Now, manufacturers are saying, okay, how do I get ahead of this, right? So what they're doing is they're building machine learning to glean from these different social sources and taking this information, aggregating it and putting it into AI and saying, okay, based on this backpack, right? That we know that come July, we're going to need to produce X number of these pink sparkle backpacks because this is what girls going back to school are going to want.
See, Jermaine,
let me just
jump in.
Let me just jump in here real quick, because I know people are like, well, what does it got to do with autonomy? It has a lot to do with autonomy because these systems are the capacity to examine our autonomy, right, and what drives the nature of that. But go ahead, Aaron. I just wanted to put that out.
I was just going to jump in with one little brief thing because I'm really passionate about this because I have 2 little boys that I'm raising, and what jobs are they going to have? And so here's the problem in America. Here's the problem specifically in America. We keep voting for Reaganomics, trickle-down economics. And so the idea is you don't tax the rich. For those that maybe don't know that are listening, you don't tax the rich, so they spend more money by employing people and give them more money. But we found out that's not true. In the last 40 years, what we found out is that they build their own bank accounts, and it does not trickle down. So here's the problem: if we stay in a system of trickle down economics, what happens to society? And this speaks to your point on autonomy, Jermaine. What happens to society when there's no more jobs?
Yeah.
When AI is doing all the jobs for all the rich people, and they don't have to give anything in terms of.
Check this out. This is a true story. Tesla, in their plant in Fremont, California, they bought these welding robots. They purchased welding robots. And what they did was they hired master welders to teach the robots.
Oh my God.
Right. And so now these robots understand what a master welder's work looks like. So when they bring new robots into the plant to do additional welding, the existing robots teach the new robots.
And maximize what they've been taught.
And they get better. They begin to take a process that's equal parts technical and artisan and make it into a fully technical and autonomous process.
Yeah.
Wow. So here's the thing that you brought up a really good point, Aaron. What are our children going to do when they grow up? And the answer is I've had this conversation with my sons, with Donovan, with Troy, with Zachary, with Ducey, with Anthony, and I talk to them and I say, listen, you need to learn to do something that a machine cannot do. So here's the thing, there will always be plumbers, there will always be electricians. There will always be tree trimmers because these are things that AI cannot do. We don't see a foreseeable future where those things happen. But this is the thing. I'm going to say this and I'll shut up. I promise. About 40 years ago, a guy named John Nesbitt wrote a book called Megatrends.
Yep.
And this, I majored in information systems in college, and my minor was in economics, right? But this book, Megatrends, was a life-changing book for me, because what it said was that the United States would shift from a manufacturing-based economy to an information and services-based economy. Okay, that's great. Information is high-paying, but it's scarce. The resources are scarce. The type of opportunities are scarce. Service, on the other hand, is going to be plentiful, but it's cheap. So basically, if you look at this country and how the middle class was built, was based on manufacturing. But Megatrends proffered that we would sacrifice our manufacturing economy in favor of this information and services economy. And now that means that, okay, people like me, I make an obscene amount of money, because I'm in information. But I look at people like say, an Amazon truck driver who makes $14 an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Bezos is taking his friends to space. That's the problem with trickle down economics.
But when I grew up, down the street from me, I have Mr. Coleman, who worked for UPS, and he built a really good living for himself and his family based on his earnings from UPS.
Yes.
In other words, so this whole thing about autonomy, right? To tie it back to autonomy, is that if we don't have the decision-making authority to choose a living that produces a lifestyle, how can we say, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier, Aaron, that autonomy, we have to reset this conversation and say that autonomy equals equality. Because if autonomy and equality become decoupled, right, then that means that there are going to be some people that have autonomy, but they have a little bit more autonomy.
Yeah.
Because of their economic standing. And this ties back to what you were saying about economics. How does this tie into economics? It absolutely does. Because again, if we're not, there was another book, and it was a counter to Megatrends, and I can't remember the name of the book, but basically it touched on Nesbitt's high tech, high touch model, and that basically what this author was saying is that things have to be equally high tech and high touch in order to make sure that everybody has equal opportunity. Because see, we can't produce equality of outcomes. Yeah. That's not reasonable, right? But we can produce equality of opportunity. And if we say, okay, what does it take to build an economic model that is based, that the middle class is based on equal parts high tech and high touch, that gives everyone equal opportunity, which gives people equal autonomy. Yeah. I hope that made sense. I kind of rambled on, but I was just like in a fucking zone, man.
No, you was, and I think the conversation too. Then now, again, the hands on, right, is the systems and the access to education, right? The access to STEM education, the access, right? So inclusiveness becomes a part of that context of conversation too, with respect to access. having these type of conversations is phenomenal. I was on what's the new app that everybody is on now, and they do the little speech and
Truth
talk.
Social.
No,
Truth Social.
It's another app. It's a little
I'm just
platform.
poking at you, Jermaine.
It's a platform. But anyway, they were talking about AI. They were talking about the systems of AI, but they were also talking about the access to those types of systems, and how AI, right, to some degree may foster some sense of prejudice as well, because who is programming these systems?
Wow.
And do these systems take into account the context of African Americans, right? Do these systems take into account indigenous people? And let me just note this. I just want to just pause just to note this, that when you're talking about there is a growing movement of indigenous people, which is called land back. They're advocating land back. They want their shit back. And that's autonomous in and of itself.
Amen.
Because they stole their shit, so they want their shit back. The Indians, the Native Americans, and the indigenous people to this land want their stuff back. But these systems that's representative, that's inclusive, that's representative of society, and so there is some barriers there, even when it comes to articulating these systems with respect to people of color, and of those that are marginalized.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that goes back to the whole 40 acres and a mule thing for Black folks, and here's the thing, right? There, to your point, Aaron, there still is it may not be agricultural, but it's definitely land-based, right? Because land is wealth. And I'll tell you something, this is a true story. My grandfather, who had a 6th grade education, he told me, he said, buy real estate. He says, the only thing God ain't making any more of.
Dude, that's Lex Luthor's dad in the first Superman movie. You got confused. I just saw Gene Hackman there, like, real estate, son.
he said, buy land, buy real estate. He said, God isn't making any more of it. And
it's true. It's true. It's just the way we profit off of land has changed. But absolutely true.
Yeah, so I put the links out there to see if anybody else wants to join in, because I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to say this. Aaron, I think this has been the most cerebral conversation that we've had since we've been doing this.
Derrick, absolutely 100% agree. That totally agree. I mean,
I feel so intellectually stimulated right now. It's ridiculous, man. My brain is on fire.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that, Derrick. 100% agree with that.
While we wait for somebody to jump in, let me just shift. I'm too stimulated because I'm a bit of a futurist, right? And so I've been having inner dialogue about AI and AI technology, and even to the point of the interface of AI technology within the context of human interface. What's his name? It talks about the brain chip and interface of AI, and things like that. And so AI is not going anywhere; it's here. And so even like the different apps and stuff that people are doing with the AI and stuff like that, those are field tests. Those are nothing more than field tests. But AI is here, and so when do the point? So there are groups right now, the human rights groups, right? They're talking about the rights of artificial intelligence. When do we recognize AI to the point of it being self-autonomous?
So that's a really good point, because the Supreme Court ruled I think about 40 years ago, that corporations were virtual people.
Yep.
At what point does AI become a virtual person?
Yep.
And let me tell you this. I'm going to give you guys a real world example. This is a project that I literally worked on, right? For a company that has a huge cash position. So what do you do when you have a lot of cash? You make more cash, right?
Yep.
Well, how do you make more cash? Interest, right?
Yep.
That's what we're taught. That's economics 101. So what we did is we built a machine learning system that went out and interfaced with all of the banks that this company did business with. And what these banks do is they have very specific incentivized high interest rates for their premium customers that they offer in 5 to 10 minute increments.
Mm-hmm.
This is a banking product, right? And they do this. They make this available. This company that has, let's say $300 billion in cash, we built an AI model that goes out and the machine learning read the banking, it did predictive analysis on when the banks would offer these rates. Mm-hmm. And what it would do is, based on this understanding, it will automatically move money into these accounts at the intervals that they expected the banks to offer these interest rates, and then withdraw it when the interest rates stop prevailing. Now, this is something that I actually worked on.
Damn.
Wow.
So the thing is that, AI, like AI can do facial recognition.
Yep.
And it can look and say, okay, this person is happy. This person is sad.
Yep.
Okay, what kinds of business decisions, what kind of purchasing decisions do people make when they're happy? And what kind do they make when they're sad? And so companies are now able to build models. They're able to build machine learning based on, see, here's the thing. All three of us do Facebook Lives.
Mm-hmm.
All three of us do Facebook videos. We do TikToks, we do Instagram, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This AI is able to look at us and say, okay, is Jermaine projecting a happy message today, or is it an unhappy message? And if it's a happy message and he happens to influence 100,000 people a day, what kind of purchasing decisions are people going to make based on Jermaine's facial expressions?
Here's where my mind goes. That's scary. But here's where my mind goes. So you have to indulge me. I'm gonna be like the Apostle Paul right now. Indulge me in a little foolishness. Indulge me in a little folly. You guys remember the Philadelphia experiment, right?
Yeah.
Where the ship disappeared and maybe traveled through time or whatever. And there was a guy.
I'm ex-Navy, so the Philadelphia experiment really resonates with me.
Okay, all right. I'd love to talk about that off camera. But there's this guy out there that went to the movie, and I don't know whatever happened, but it triggered. Supposedly, he was on the ship when that happened. They came back, they didn't remember anything, and it triggered a bunch of memories. And he goes forward into, like, his story is that he went forward into like 2737 or 2731 or some shit like that. Mm-hmm. And everything was being run by AI, and their new god was basically like this AI system that controlled everything and regulated everything. And I mean,
You know
I'm
what?
putting that out
Something
there.
happened today. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, right? But the Artemis mission to the moon ended today.
Mm.
They launched a probe. You know, it's basically the SLS NASA rocket launched the Orion capsule, and they went and orbited the moon and came back, and it splashed down. It was an unmanned, uh, you know, mission. But guess what? It was completely 100% driven by AI.
Mm.
Damn.
And it was a successful mission. It was like they went to the moon, orbited the moon a couple of times, and then they left the moon's orbit and came back to Earth.
Mm.
Now this is what AI can do. I mean, AI can do very macro things like that, but it can also do micro things like let me. God damn. You know what? Back in the late 90s, I used to day trade, right?
Sure.
And this was the first time that I was like a paper millionaire, right? Because I'm day trading, and so me and some friends, what we were able to do, and I can say this now because we don't work for any of these people anymore, but we used to use corporate networks because they have the bandwidth to do, you know, really rapid trading. And so we're doing all this day trading, and we have this little circle of friends where we are trading, you know, sharing information about different stocks and about different you know, different financial instruments, and we're making money. We're killing it, right? There are no successful day traders today because AI
Right.
has completely usurped
Yeah.
Mm.
That's another
the
job I was thinking about.
individual investor.
And even stockbrokers probably and hedge fund managers eventually, you know, they're going
No,
to
I
be
mean the hedge fund managers, they're not really managing hedge funds anymore. The hedge fund managers are managing teams of developers and data analysts that are building AI models.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Gentlemen, this has been extremely stimulating, but I have reached my limit.
Well, hang on, before you go, Ben is here.
Okay.
Ben.
Hey, Jermaine, Derrick, Aaron, how you
Hey,
guys
man.
doing?
Good.
So Aaron's time is limited, Ben. So you got to make it quick, man.
Well, you guys were just on a roll, and I was just gonna join in and observe because there's so much good stuff happening here. But then Aaron decided, well, I'm gonna leave.
Sorry, dude. I'm sorry, dude. I've
All
sat
right,
as long as I can sit.
No,
It's all good.
Aaron has a legitimate reason. It's not he's not just being antisocial. He has a legitimate reason. So
Well, I know.
Yeah, he knows.
Yeah.
I got some stuff, health issues going on, Jermaine, that doesn't
Yeah.
let me sit for a long period of time.
Yeah. It's cool. You good, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
so you can go bail out, but Aaron, you know it's the same Friday night routine. So
All right, brother. Welcome to our TED Talk. This was not a TED Talk. This was not a TED Talk. I can't even say that.
that's
So
better than a TED Talk.
Yeah, this was way above that. So, Jermaine, thank you for coming on, man. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your perspective. And I appreciate your transparency, your genuineness. And I just absolutely love you. And thank you for spending your time with us. Ben, you know, I love you. Derrick, you know, it's like we slid down the same birth canal together. Love you guys.
Love you, Aaron. Take care,
Love you, man.
Later. Peace and hair grease. I'm out.
All right. Yeah, so we'll go on a little bit longer without Aaron. But yeah, Jermaine, I just want to, man, I want to give you so many props, man, from the bottom of my heart. Dude, I'm serious. You know, while Aaron was on the call, I said this, so I'll say it again. that this was the single most cerebral call or cerebral show that we've done. And Aaron and I have been doing this 2.5 years now.
Yeah, your perspective inspires me, man. You are a thinker.
Yeah. Just jump on in there because it's divergent. It's crazy than motherfucker up in there.
And Beth wanted me to make sure that I said hello to you too because she really enjoyed reading for you the other night. So
tell her
where is Beth? Is she close by?
Tell Beth
she's taking some time to herself. It was a rough week. So
okay, yeah, I know it was, but I was like, if she could stick her head in here, that would just be a blessing to me.
Just tell Beth to look at this image right here. I'm on it.
Celtic sea salt.
Thank you. Hey, honey, you want to come in here for a second?
Yeah, tell her, come on.
Yeah, just tell her to stick her head in just for a minute. I have another Facebook friend. Her name is Andrea the Witch, and I want to get her
say hello. I know. What was it?
Listen, she did a reading for me,
right?
Okay. And it was what I needed. It was what I needed for sure, and I appreciate that.
Hey,
there she is. What's up, baby girl? How you doing?
You got it. That's that Celtic sea salt. You did it.
And I got some more stuff. It's supposed to be. I'm after this. I'm finna go check my porch. It should be out there on the porch.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have any sea salt, but if I could send weed through the mail, I'd send it to you.
Yes. Yes.
I got a picture.
I talk about you all the time. You are like one of my heroes, and one day when you're feeling better, got to get you on here and get you to talk about your whole story.
Oh yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
She's been such a
you're one of my favorite people in the world, and I've never met you in person. You and Ben both. I mean, I can't stop thinking about you guys. Sending good vibes your way. You guys are just the shit to me, really.
Aw, thanks, Derrick.
We love you, man. We really do. I mean, deep love. So.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm always sharing Ben's stuff. I'm like, dude, this dude like just speaks to my heart, man.
I know, man. I'm like, where does he come? Where does he get all this from? And why aren't you writing a book, man?
I ask that question every day. I'm like, where does he come up with this?
Yeah. I agree with Derrick. Take all of that and put that in a book, man.
Man.
Yeah, I agree with that for 100.
Yeah, if you need help editing, man, I'm your guy. I will help you out because I believe in you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. The book is done. I just the whole publishing process is the issue.
I mean, you can self-publish, and I can show you how because I did it, and I'm going to do it again. Okay. But do whatever I can do to help you get your message out in the world. I'm on it.
It's necessary. It's so needed. What you say and what you convey, in your messages is so resonating to, this movement, right? It's like, what's for me post this, right? For me, especially post Christianity, what's this realm of thinking? And you supplement that for me, and it helps, and it's a guide for sure for my life and my journey personally. So I just wanted to acknowledge you, publicly here. So if you guys are not following Ben Urban, right?
Ben Urban.
Yeah.
Follow Ben Urban. Follow Beth Urban.
Ben Urban right now.
Yep. And then follow Jermaine Thomas as well.
Yes.
Because this is a cat that actually thinks about shit.
Yeah,
I do.
you have a finger on the pulse of what people need. So
Yeah.
get it.
You know what? Let me see if I can do this. No, actually, well, yeah, maybe I can. Let me see. I'm going to do this. If you see up there, there's a boxing glove, right? That's a boxing glove that I have that's signed by Jermaine Taylor when he was the middleweight champion of the world. And so whenever I think about Jermaine Thomas, Jermaine Taylor comes to mind because I said, Jermaine Thomas kicks ass more than Jermaine Taylor did.
Yeah, I done been kicked out of a lot of churches too, so you can add that to my belt.
I don't think I'm allowed in any more churches, man. I think that if I go into a church now, armed security is going to come and escort me out.
But listen, if you guys, looking for, a reading, Ben's wife is phenomenal. I mean, what she shared with me was life changing. Listen, it was life changing. Thank you. You've been a catalyst for me, and I appreciate that. I mean that.
Okay,
I got my green bracelet on
reading.
the way. Is thank you. You unlocked something for me, and I'm not going to be the same after that. I appreciate that.
Oh, well, it was an honor. Thank you.
So Beth, I need the hookup.
Okay. All you gotta do is send me a message.
Okay. I'm gonna do that as soon as we end this show.
Okay.
But there's a friend of mine. Her name is Andrea, and she goes by Andrea the Witch on Facebook. And she is just as dope as you are.
Oh, I gotta look her up. Yeah, I gotta look her up.
She's the shit for real.
Oh, Ben's got to get fried pickles out of the onion. So, onion oven. He's getting fried pickles out of the oven. Yeah, that's what we do down south. We eat fried pickles instead of.
I love fried pickles.
Yeah, instead of French fries, we do fried pickles. So, he's getting those out, I guess. Well, you having your snack, baby.
For the record, I did something today that I normally don't do. Like normally when I smoke meat, it's like on the weekend and I don't have any work to do. But I actually started my smoker during my work day. I went out during lunchtime and I put a couple of tri-tips on. And they were just absolutely they are insane.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
So when I jump off this call, I'm going back and getting into the tri-tip again.
That's right, because are you Central Time?
Central Time, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
What time y'all is, Beth?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
What time y'all? What time? What?
Eastern.
Eastern. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking about tri-tips. That reminds me, I need to make pot roast again.
Okay.
Now that we're talking about food.
Ooh.
You don't want to know what the secret to a really good pot roast is?
Come on, girl. Talk about it.
Well, you got to make it in the slow cooker.
Uh-huh.
It's the only way to do it. You got to cook it all day. Sherry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cooking sherry. Or cooking sherry or drinking sherry.
The drinking sherry.
Okay.
Or cooking sherry, whichever. Yeah. You add sherry to the broth.
I'm going to give you a point that's going to set your pot roast on fire, right? Okay. That before you put it in the slow cooker, put it in a cast iron skillet and make sure you sear it on both sides real good.
Okay.
And then put it in the slow cooker.
Okay.
And watch the magic happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're talking about your fried pickles.
Okay.
I love fried pickles, by the way. What part of North Carolina are you guys in, Beth?
Wilmington. the
Now,
coast.
how far is that from Raleigh?
So we are about 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 hour drive, 2.5. So I don't know if y'all have heard of if you remember in the 90s, a TV show called Dawson's Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that was my
Same
show.
town. It was filmed here.
And that
Yep.
One Tree Hill too.
And
right?
yeah, so it was One Tree Hill. They were both filmed here.
Wow.
Yeah. I tell people that and they're like, "Oh, I know what you're talking about." Yeah, that's where we live.
I have two stepdaughters in Raleigh. And
Yeah.
they, and they like connecting with my friends. So
Send them our way. Yeah.
yeah.
We're the beach town where everybody from Raleigh comes when they want to go to the beach.
Interesting.
Like one of my stepdaughters is a data analyst, and the other one owns a hair salon.
Mm.
So
We have a pretty comfortable
Here.
sectional. So
Yeah.
if they want to come visit.
well,
Any family
I
of
wanna
Derrick's
do
is family to ours. So.
I want to have a big confab here in Oklahoma where everybody's in the pool.
And margarita.
That'll work for me.
Uh-huh.
I used to mess around with an Okie from Skokie when I was in the Navy.
Okay.
Wait a minute, you were in the Navy?
I was in the Navy, USS
No
Constellation,
shit.
TV-64, stationed in San Diego, California. Yes, sir.
Shut up, man.
Yep,
I had no idea. I'm a Navy man.
Yes, shipmate. What's up?
All right, shipmate. All right.
Yep. Listen,
Wow.
and while Derrick is on here lifting up other people, talking about follow them, listen, you guys need to, because I shared this on my page, but you follow Derrick as well. He's talking about writing a secondary. You see his book up there, Deconstructing Religion. He's writing a secondary to that. He's also contributed to another book on deconstruction too, right? Derrick, what was the name of the book?
Before You Lose Your Mind.
Before You Lose Your Mind. There's a section in there, a very powerful piece. So get that book, and follow Derrick Day as well.
And one other quick thing too. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be doing an interview with Carl and Laura Forehand with their book Into the Desert.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing anything tomorrow morning, 9:00 Central Time, join in. We're going to do a live interview, Facebook Live. We're going to do interview, and then Carl and Laura will probably give out some books, and we're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
We're going to have a good time. But that's the thing, man. Thank you, Jermaine. I'm all about uplifting and edifying people who are breaking the breaking the walls of religion.
Yeah,
I'm all about that.
You know what I would love to see is Jermaine and Kyle Butler to do a live together. That would be a lot of fun.
Look, listen, man, you speaking my language. I was telling Kyle I did a live the other day, and I was like, listen, man, we got to get on sooner than later. I actually reached out to him to come on to my podcast, but I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to just because you said that. That's in my Pentecostal context. That's confirmation, brother.
Synchronicity, bro.
Yeah, for sure. All day.
Well, I'm really grateful for you taking the time out to spend the time with us. Again, this has literally been the most cerebral show that we've done in the 2.5 years that we've been doing Freeology together. Yeah. And dude, you are welcome anytime you say, hey, I got something, remember the old show, That's My Mama?
Yeah.
And Junior will walk in, he say, I got it, and I got to give it to you. You're that guy. So anytime you feel like you got it and you want to give it to us, bring it on, dog.
Hey, for sure. Love, man.
So with that being said, Aaron said, thank you for attending our TED Talk. And he also said, peace of hair grease. So I'm just going to repeat the two of those things. Thank you for attending our TED Talk, and peace and hair grease. And love you guys.
Blessings.
Yeah, love you guys too.